For 18 years, a mass murderer successfully eluded the FBI. He was wanted for the murder of his entire family.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining the most infamous times respected and beloved people in a community or industry were discovered to have taken lives.
How can you kill so many women and still be able to live?
Mikhail Popkov. He was the kind of man people should have felt safe with, a police officer patrolling the street. Except he was one of Russia's deadliest serial killers. Dressed in his police uniform, he lured women into his car, murdering them and brutally mutilating their bodies.
He offered rides to women, sometimes in his police car while he was off duty.
His acts were so horrific, he earned the chilling nickname, the Angarsk Maniac. Between 1992 and 2011, Mikhail killed over 80 women and minors, all while claiming he was cleansing the streets of those he considered immoral. His downfall began when investigators discovered tracks from an off-road vehicle used by law enforcement, which was linked to multiple crime scenes. A massive DNA sweep of both former and current police officers in Irkutsk finally exposed Popkov.
Today, in court, prosecutors described him as having, quote, a pathological attraction to killing people.
Linda Hazard. Even though she was no real doctor, people trusted Linda Hazard's fasting method. With no medical degree, she exploited a loophole in Washington state that allowed her to practice medicine. Her clinic, Wilderness Heights, later nicknamed Starvation Heights, attracted patients who believed fasting could cure everything from pain to chronic illness. In reality, her methods were extreme and deadly. While some patients died from starvation, Hazard forged their wills and stole from them. She continued her cruel practices for years, killing at least 15 people. Hazard was finally convicted of manslaughter in 1912 for the death of Claire Williamson, but was released after serving only 2 years. Ironically, it was her own unconventional healing method that ultimately led to her death. Philip Markoff. This killer's case is stunning because his entire life looked like the opposite of what you'd expect from a murderer. Markoff volunteered at Albany Medical Center's ER, excelled academically, and was a National Honor Society member studying to become a doctor. On paper, he seemed like the perfect, reliable future medical practitioner, but his actions told a different story.
As prosecutors say, the 23-year-old medical student targeted women who advertised massage services on Craigslist.
Known as the Craigslist Killer, he targeted women through ads before robbing and attacking them. He was eventually arrested in 2009 after investigators linked him to the Craigslist robberies and murder of Julissa Brisman. Even then, his fiancée defended him at first, showing just how deeply deceptive people can be, even to those closest to them.
The death of Philip Markoff comes 16 months after police say he began his brutal 7-day crime spree, and 1 year after the weekend he was set to be married.
Richard Angelo. Like Markoff, Richard Angelo hid his crimes behind a respectable identity. During his nursing program, he was known as a top student, an Eagle Scout, and volunteer firefighter. He was drawn to saving people. But behind that dependable, caring image was Angelo's chilling motive. He wanted to be seen as a hero. To create situations where he'd save people, he injected patients with powerful muscle relaxants that caused respiratory failure and cardiac arrest. Then he tried to resuscitate them. Many patients died. His scheme unraveled in 1987 when one patient survived the injection and reported what happened. Investigators linked him to at least 35 deaths at New York's Good Samaritan Medical Center, and he was sentenced 50 years to life. John List. A Sunday school teacher, an accountant, and a former military officer. John List was everything society teaches us to trust. But in 1971, after losing his job and fearing financial ruin, he committed one of the most disturbing family murders in American history.
The manhunt for a mass murderer had begun. Police issued a nationwide murder warrant for the arrest of John Emil List.
Calmly and methodically, List murdered his mother, wife, and 3 children, later claiming he did it to save their souls. But this man was far more twisted. He didn't just murder his family, he cleaned up the crime scenes, wrote letters to explain himself, and then vanished. The bodies of his family weren't discovered until almost a month later. By then, List had changed his identity and lived undetected for 18 years before he was finally caught in 1989.
John List, guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder. and sentenced him to life in prison.
H.H. Holmes. Widely considered America's first known serial killer, H.H. Holmes is a chilling study in contrasts. He came across as this smart, medically curious, and licensed pharmacist whose demeanor earned the trust of insurers and potential victims.
That man is Herman Webster Mudgett, known to the world as a notorious killer, H.H. Holmes.
But he was really a swindler, con artist, and a murderer. For personal gain, he lured mostly women to his Chicago building, later dubbed the Murder Castle. There, he strangled, suffocated, and poisoned them. He reportedly murdered some employees, his swindler partner, Benjamin Preitzel, and 3 minors, selling some bodies to local medical schools. Holmes confessed to killing 27 victims, though estimates suggest it could actually be in the hundreds. He was eventually arrested and hanged in 1896.
With all eyes on the spectacle, no eyes are on him or the increasing list of missing women.
Jane Topin.
Jane Topin, America's most prolific female serial killer, killed just to see the life drain out of her victims' eyes.
You may not know this, but Jane Topin was once called Jolly Jane. Before she became the infamous killer who preyed on the vulnerable, she was well-liked, cheerful, and seemingly caring. But what was she really? Topin was a nurse, trusted to care for the sick, yet she turned that trust into a deadly experiment. Driven by disturbing curiosity, she gave lethal doses of morphine and atropine to her patients just to observe their reaction. Her crimes came to light when she killed Alden Davis, his sister, and 2 daughters. After the Davis family ordered a toxology exam that confirmed poisoning, Topin was arrested for murder. In 1902, she later confessed to killing up to 31 people.
She was finally brought to justice in 1901 after she killed off the entire Davis family of Calumet, Massachusetts.
Robert Lee Yates.
Guilty, Your Honor.
Robert Yates's decorated military background makes the contrast with his crimes all the more chilling. He didn't just serve. His military career earned him several commendations and medals. After retirement, he continued in the Army National Guard and began working as a correctional officer in 1975, the same year his first murders began. Over the decades, Yates targeted sex workers, soliciting them before killing and dumping their bodies. His military and law enforcement persona likely helped him evade suspicion for years. It wasn't until 2000, after the murder of Jennifer Joseph, that authorities caught him. Investigators then linked him to at least 12 victims, though he may have killed more. He's currently serving life in Washington State Penitentiary.
Nothing I can say will erase the sorrow, the pain, and the anguish that you feel and that I've caused in your lives. I've caused much sorrow, much pain. You can't know how much pain I know I've caused for all of you and my family.
Thomas Neal Cream. Another chilling example of a trusted doctor turned predator is Thomas Neal Cream. Posing as an abortionist in the 19th century, he administered lethal doses of strychnine to both men and women across London, America, and Canada. One patient, Catherine Gardner, was found dead by chloroform behind his office, yet he faced no charges. Cream went on to murder other women, and even when charged with killing a patient's husband, he was shockingly released. He continued his spree, targeting sex workers and lower-class women, often relying on blackmail for monetary gain. In fact, it was his own blackmail letters that later drew attention to him. Arrested and tried in 1892, he was found guilty of murders after 12 minutes of deliberation. Andrei Chikatilo. Hard to believe, but the Rostov Ripper once held the respectable position as a literature teacher in the Soviet Union, a role meant to inspire trust. Yet even as a teacher, Andrei Chikatilo was truly disturbed. He moved from sexual assaults to committing his first documented murder in 1978. Over the next decade, Chikatilo preyed on women and minors, luring them to secluded areas before murdering them in brutal ways.
When they found some of the victims, you could still see the reflection of horror in their eyes. It was very hard to look at.
Despite growing suspicions, Chikatilo evaded capture for years as investigators struggled to connect the crimes. His spree finally ended when forensic advances and careful stakeouts exposed him. Arrested in 1990, the Rostov Ripper was found guilty of 52 murders. Isn't it terrifying how someone in a trusted position could be such a monster?
In the aftermath of his execution, writers, reporters, and victims' families attempted to find some trace of humanity in Andrei Chikatilo. But in many ways, this man, who committed extraordinarily cruel crimes, remains an enigma.
Dorothea Puente. After a long history of petty crime, Puente appears to have gotten her act together when she opened a boarding house in Sacramento, California.
As the birds chirp and the cars whiz by, the home where a cold-blooded caretaker turned unexpected killer once lived sits quietly.
She quickly earned the admiration of the neighborhood by helping those struggling. However, she wasn't exactly a saint, having been convicted of multiple grand theft charges.
She knows that vulnerable people aren't really looked after, that people are forgotten about, that people don't care about them, and she goes and she targets them.
And it didn't stop there. In 1982, Puente's tenants began vanishing or perishing mysteriously. Their landlady had been taking their lives with medications and then committing fraud by cashing in on their Social Security checks. In 1988, with the help from a former resident, Puente was arrested for murder. In 1993, she was found guilty of 3 murders, with the jury deadlocked over 6 other cases, earning Puente life imprisonment before passing away in 2011.
She did it without hesitation, without remorse. She set out on a journey, and that journey ended November 11th, 1988, when we arrived at her doorstep.
Gordon Cummins. As a member of the UK's Royal Air Force during World War II, Cummins was well respected for his service during a difficult time.
Cummins was married, but he had a reputation amongst his fellows for drinking and womanizing. He was often out and furtively sneaking back in late after curfew.
Yet, in 1942, shortly after being transferred to London, he took his first life outside an air raid shelter. Within 6 days, Cummins killed 3 more women, earning him the moniker of the Blackout Killer. After a failed attempt and leaving behind RAF items that could easily be traced to him, Cummins was arrested.
On the 17th of February, the day before his 28th birthday, Cummins appeared at Bow Street Police Court to be charged with the murders.
After 35 minutes, the jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to death. Yet when the sentence was set to be carried out, an air raid siren rang. Despite that, Cummins became the only convicted murderer in Britain to have been executed during an air raid. Carl Denke. After several business failures, everything looked up for Denke, as he ran a leather and meat store and volunteered at his local church in modern-day Jambica, Poland. The German national was well-liked by locals, even nicknaming him Papa. However, in 1903, Denke began taking the lives of travelers. He kept a ledger noting his murders and also appeared to sell the remains as pork products.
Ach du, ich habe gehört, dass du trotz dieser wahrlich schlechten Zeiten etwas für das junge Brautpaar gespendet hast.
Ja, ich habe etwas Fleisch zugegeben. Ich habe es sehr gerne gemacht.
Even when an escaped victim told the police, their account was doubted due to Denke's reputation. Yet, when the police were forced to arrest him, Denke took his own life in 1924. However, the cops soon discovered his horrible crimes. Denke's ledger had 31 victims listed, including the one who escaped, but evidence suggests he might have taken over 42 lives.
Investigators also came across an entry in his diary that indicated to them that Carl may have murdered someone as early as 1903.
Bevan Spencer von Einem. In 1972, von Einem was driving down the road when he spotted Roger James crawling out of the River Torrens near Adelaide, Australia, with a broken ankle. James, George Duncan, and a third unknown man were thrown into the water in a homophobic attack believed to have been conducted by police officers.
One academic, Dr. E.H. Medlin, said he too had been attacked on the banks of the Torrens, and he believed his attacker was a member of the Vice Squad. Unfortunately,
Duncan didn't survive. Von Einem drove James to the hospital for treatment. Yet that Good Samaritan act didn't last. In 1983, von Einem abducted Richard Kelvin, the teenage son of reporter Rob Kelvin. Weeks later, he took Kelvin's life. eventually leading to his arrest and being sentenced to life imprisonment. However, it's also suspected that von Einem could be responsible for the family murders, 5 killings that took place between 1979 and 1983.
This is one of the most disturbing crimes I've ever written about.
Aaron Hernandez, a rising star in the NFL, in 2012, shortly after signing a multi-million-dollar contract extension with the New England Patriots, Hernandez donated $50,000 to Robert Kraft's charity that he set up after his wife's passing. However, within a year, the tight end's reputation was forever tarnished when he was arrested for the murder of Odin Lloyd.
Family members say Lloyd played some semi-professional football. They say he was an honest, hard-working young man.
In 2015, Hernandez was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. At the same time, he was also charged with a 2012 double murder in Boston, Massachusetts.
Acted in a manner, like a tough guy all the time, like is the way I would explain it.
However, in 2017, 5 days after being acquitted of this crime, and while the Lloyd murder sentence was vacated under appeal, Hernandez took his own life in prison. In 2019, his conviction for killing Lloyd was reinstated. John Edward Robinson. After being a scout as a child and performing for Queen Elizabeth II and meeting Judy Garland, Robinson would later become a scoutmaster, a baseball coach, and a Sunday school teacher.
He loved animals and got along great with everybody.
Yet he was also committing fraud, resulting in his arrest. By 1984, Robinson went further by taking his first victim's life. By the 90s, he'd become the first internet serial killer.
The internet changed everything for us. But the internet also changed a lot for John Robinson. It gave him a new weapon.
Robinson, under the alias Slave Master, would go to adult websites to lure victims. By the time bodies were found on his farm, resulting in his arrest in 2000, Robinson had taken at least 8 lives across Missouri and Kansas. As well as receiving life imprisonment in Missouri, he was sentenced to death in Kansas. Daniel Marsh. In 2008, young Marsh received public acclaim for saving his dad's life by performing CPR as he had a heart attack. Yet, despite being handed an American Red Cross Heroes Award, only 3 years later, he'd do the opposite by taking lives. After walking the streets of Davis, California, Marsh, then a teenager, broke into the home of Claudia Maupin and Oliver Northup and murdered the couple.
Friends of Marsh said they saw him in the days before his arrest and had a hard time believing he could be responsible.
He did have a lot of joy in his life, and personally, I couldn't ever see him doing what he's been accused of.
There was no evidence linking him to the crime, but because he bragged about it to his then-girlfriend and a friend who told the police, he was arrested.
Daniel just told us exactly what's going on with the psychopath aspect, where he doesn't feel empathy for anyone and that he wants to kill people. And when they come together, that's the perfect storm and results in these horrific crimes.
In 2014, Marsh was sentenced to 52 years to life, with parole eligibility after 25 years due to being a juvenile at the time of the crime.
The community that my mom and Chip love so much can rest easy tonight, knowing that he won't be back anytime soon to their community.
Russell Williams. For 23 years, Williams was an exceptional officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force. After all, he'd led several projects and flown dignitaries, such as Queen Elizabeth II and Canada's Prime Minister, earning him the rank of Colonel. However, everything changed for the family man in 2010.
How could we have missed this? Is there something that we did or didn't do that would have given us a clue?
After Jessica Lloyd had vanished from her home, the police found unique tire impressions. As they canvassed the area, they spotted Williams driving a car that matched. During the interrogation, he confessed and provided evidence to a mountain of crimes, including many assaults and the murder of Lloyd.
I saw her in her house on her treadmill.
Williams was later charged with the killing of Corporal Marie-France Comu. The the disgraced colonel was sentenced to life imprisonment and was stripped of his military honors, including having his uniform burned.
The people that knew Russ Williams, that shepherded him along in his career, that helped him at key points, that selected him, as I did, for senior leadership positions, view this as the ultimate betrayal of that honor.
Dean Corll. Following his honorable discharge from the U.S. Army in 1965, Corll moved back to Houston, Texas, to take up a position of vice president at his family's business, the Corll Candy Company.
There's still a reason to tell this story because there's still people like this out there.
He began handing out free treats to children, earning him the nickname of the Candy Man, as he installed a pool table in the factory for employees and local youths to use. However, Corll didn't do this solely out of the goodness of his heart. Instead, he groomed David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley into being his accomplices in murders. From 1970 to 1973, Corll had taken at least 29 lives. His spree ended when he was killed by Henley.
Corll turns around to leave. Henley followed him and pumped 3 into his back, and that killed him.
Due to their participation, Henley and Brooks both received life imprisonment.
It needs to be told. It needs to be told to our next generation to be careful, you know. Watch out for that candy man, you know what I mean? Because they're out there, you know, they're out there.
Bernie Tita. In 1996, Tita's employer and friend, Marjorie Nugent, vanished in Carthage, Texas, leaving him in charge of her finances over her own son, Rod.
Is this case about money?
Yes, it is.
How so?
I think that defines everything.
With a new $10 million fortune, the former mortician funneled a chunk of it into aiding the community and friends. However, after Rod arrived at his mother's, he found her body in the freezer. In 1997, Tita was swiftly arrested and confessed to murdering Nugent, eventually resulting in a life sentence.
I deserve time. I've done a particularly horrible thing, the worst thing in my life.
However, with the story explored in the 2011 film Bernie, Tita was released for a retrial after new evidence that he was in a dissociative state during the murder following a childhood trauma. In 2016, after living with Bernie director Richard Linklater, Tita was resentenced to 99 years to life. Ted Bundy. Nowadays, we know of Bundy as a prolific serial killer who took upwards of 20 lives across several states, resulting in his execution in 1989.
The end for Ted Bundy, a 42-year-old killer who left a trail of at least 20 murders from one end of the country to the other.
However, back in the late 1960s and into the 70s, he was seemingly very different, at least before his horrible crimes were known. Bundy was heavily involved in politics, helping with Nelson Rockefeller's presidential campaign, and other politicians such as Daniel J. Evans and Arthur Fletcher.
People thought he was going to be, a young Ted Kennedy, but for the Republican Party. But again, they saw an exterior that he worked hard to create.
While studying psychology at the University of Washington, he was an honor student who volunteered at a hotline helping those experiencing a mental health crisis. According to Bundy, while working on the hotline in 1971, he took his first life, claiming that he killed 30 people altogether.
I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me.
Marcel Petiot. With many demographics fearing for their safety in Nazi-occupied Paris, France during World War II, someone was willing to help them escape. Petiot.
People were intrigued. It was so gruesome.
The doctor had a network to help people escape persecution and go to South America. Petiot even provided them with vaccines to enter the countries. However, it was all lies. Instead of vaccines, Petiot injected people with fatal poison before stealing what little they had brought for their new life.
People came, they phoned, they said, so-and-so had left, a friend of mine. She was going to go to a doctor to help her escape. I think it could be Dr. Petiot.
After neighbors complained of foul-smelling smoke coming from his chimney in 1944, the doctor's crimes were discovered. Petiot, who claimed he was secretly working for the resistance, is believed to have taken at least 27 lives. In 1946, after being found guilty of murder, Petiot was executed.
Petiot accepts no guilt whatsoever and maintains that he was acting only on orders as a genuine member of the resistance.
Elizabeth Báthory. Nobles are typically thought of as being polite and respectful, albeit perhaps detached from average civilian life.
Also, even those nobles who are below her would probably be treated with indifference and a certain amount of disdain as well.
However, Báthory, a noblewoman in the Kingdom of Hungary, was anything but decent. While living a decadent and social life as one of the elite, she and her servants were kidnapping nearby peasants to torment and murder.
She was allowed progressively to discover that she could get away with more and more.
In 1610, with evidence and witness statements mounting, Báthory was arrested. Depending on the sources, after being found guilty, she was either under house arrest or secluded in a bricked-up room. 4 of the servants accused of helping her take up to 650 lives were executed. However, Báthory's true victim count is unknown, and it's speculated by some that she was framed.
She is the ultimate mysterious character who is the starring role in her own story.
Diomedes Diaz. Known as the King of Vallenato, Diaz was a beloved figure in Colombia's music scene.
Por favor, vuelve ahora, que si tú no lo haces.
After all, he was born into poverty before becoming one of the country's biggest names. Yet, in 1997, Diaz was linked to the death of Doris Adriana Niño. He was accused of murdering her after an argument and getting his bodyguards to dispose of her body. While he was under house arrest in 2000, Diaz escaped and fled to a paramilitary group in the mountains. Eventually, in 2002, the musician gave himself up. Diaz was found guilty of manslaughter, earning him a very lenient 37 months in jail, outraging Niño's family. Diaz continued releasing music before passing away in 2013. Phil Spector. As the pioneer of the wall of sound recording technique, Spector was one of the most influential music producers of all time. He worked with many top acts, including the Beatles, the Ramones, and Ike and Tina Turner. Yet in 2003, all that respect and legacy was destroyed when Spector fatally shot Lana Clarkson at his Alhambra, California mansion. Following a highly publicized trial in 2007 that ended with a hung jury, the producer was retried the following year.
Spector showed no emotion as he was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Lana Clarkson.
In 2009, Spector, who claimed Clarkson had done it to herself accidentally, was found guilty of her murder.
And it could have happened years earlier with any of the other women, but she got the bullet.
He was sentenced to 19 years to life before passing away in 2021. Dennis Nilsen, a corporal who spent 11 years in the British Army, a former police officer, and then working in the civil service in a job center while active in trade unions. Nilsen's history was incredible. Yet, his respectable past was covering a much darker side. In 1983, a plumber checking on blocked drains on a street in London, England, found it filled with human remains. The source was traced to Nilsen's residence, where he soon admitted his crimes to the police. Since 1978, he'd been luring men and teenagers to his home before taking their lives.
The whole area has now been completely cordoned off and newsmen ordered away from the scene.
Nilsen initially confessed to taking 16 lives, but it's believed he killed at least 12. He was sentenced to life imprisonment before passing away in 2018.
The only reason he was stopped is because his activities imposed on somebody else. Nothing to do with the victims.
John Wayne Gacy. If he wasn't at his own construction business, Gacy could be located entertaining children while dressed in one of his clown personas, or being active in local politics.
He would meet important people, Mayor Daley.
He was so well respected in Chicago that he was even able to meet then First Lady Rosalind Carter in 1978. However, since 1972, Gacy had been a serial killer. Often with the promise of work, he lured men and teenagers to his house before murdering them.
Gacy fits his car with red flashing lights to make it look like an unmarked police cruiser.
He would see somebody that he wanted as his prey. He would stop him, turn his red lights on, say, "You're out after curfew, get in the car."
It's believed Gacy took at least 33 lives. However, after he was tied to Robert Piast's disappearance and murder, a search of Gacy's house found human remains, leading to his arrest. In 1980, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to execution, which was enacted in 1994.
And I am at peace with myself.
Dennis Rader. Living in Park City, Kansas, Rader had the respect of locals as he was previously a Cub Scout leader, served on the Sedgwick County Animal Control Advisory Board, and was president of the local church council.
In 1975, Rader became a father and by day led the life of a normal family man with a job at a security company.
However, in 2004, after he read articles about the BTK cold case with the Wichita Eagle newspaper, he couldn't ignore it. After all, Rader was BTK, taking at least 10 lives from 1974 to 1991.
BTK started sending packages with mementos from his crimes.
After taunting the newspaper and the KAKE news channel, he wanted to send them a floppy disk of his writings. However, after he was deceptively told he couldn't be traced, the police were able to discover his location from the disk's metadata and arrested Rader. In 2005, he received 10 consecutive life sentences.
1 minute, you had a man in your life who you thought was a loving father.
Right.
The next minute, he's a serial killer.
Right. I had to learn how to grieve the loss of somebody I loved very much that no one else loved anymore.
Chris Benoit. For 22 years, the Canadian wrestler wowed audiences all over the world, earning titles everywhere as he worked for some of the biggest promotions around, such as WWE, WCW, and New Japan.
Watching Chris Benoit was one of the reasons why I really enjoyed Stampede Wrestling and why I started really thinking, maybe I can do this.
In 2007, Benoit stated his family had food poisoning, forcing him to miss some WWE house shows. However, when he didn't turn up for the pay-per-view Vengeance Night of Champions, the police arrived at Benoit's house.
There was an odor in the house.
They found the bodies of the wrestler, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel. The tragedy was then announced on WWE Raw. However, it soon emerged that Benoit had taken the lives of Nancy and Daniel before taking his own. It's believed that chronic traumatic encephalopathy and substance misuse played a role in Benoit's terrible actions.
Do you think you will ever be able to or want to give forgiveness towards Chris?
Yes, I think I do someday want to be able to forgive him. I do, because carrying around the burden of hate gets exhausting.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Harold Shipman. Since 1974, Shipman had been working as a general practitioner in England.
Dr. Shipman was very much the old school type. He liked to deal with the patient from the cradle to the grave, patients who may be with another doctor, may have been admitted to hospital, he would care for at home.
Despite being fined for forging prescriptions for his own use, he soon became a beloved doctor, setting up his own surgery in Hyde. Shipman was even interviewed on TV about treatment for the mentally ill and was known to do house visits for his patients, often being included in their wills over their families.
Just how many patients in the town of Hyde has this doctor killed?
However, in 1998, he was arrested for administering lethal medications to his patients and then forging their wills on his own typewriter. In 2000, Shipman was found guilty of 15 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he took his own life in 2004. His crimes opened up the Shipman Inquiry, which concluded that he'd killed 250 people.
For the families of Harold Shipman's hundreds of victims, it will leave forever unanswered the question of why he killed on such a scale, and if he ever felt any genuine remorse for the terrible suffering he caused.
Which killer was the most deceptive? Let us know in the comments section.